Hi everybody, it's Mr. Fossa. Hope you're having a good day. So this week our lesson is about drawing a portrait. Mrs. Ferguson and I thought that, since we worked with landscape and then still life, we thought we'd go with like the third big one and work a little bit with how to draw a picture of a person. So that's what this week's lesson is about. As I mentioned in the slideshow, one of the things that's kind of difficult for us is that, like, when we're little, we learn to draw things in a certain way, like usually by drawing a symbol of something. Like, for example, when we're little, we learn to draw a house, in a certain way. And even though houses don't look like this, we sort of like come up with this like symbol for a house, or a symbol for a tree with a squirrel hole or whatever, that's what it does, like whatever it is. And even though things don't look like that in real life, like we do that over and over and over and over again, because once we learn to do it, like at least everybody knows what that's supposed to be. And, it just kind of makes drawing easy for us. And we do the same thing with people, where we learn to draw when we're little. We somehow learn to draw, a face, right? Like however yours looks, yours might not look like mine, but, we learn to draw some sort of a face that at least everybody knows it's a person. And it has ears and it has a neck and a body, and then we just always draw that same thing. So like in school or for fun, like if we have to draw a picture of, say, like, Christopher Columbus, there's Christopher Columbus, right? Or if we have to draw a picture of, whoever, it's Father Sarah, it's whoever it is, like we tend to draw the same person. And even if it's, like a girl, like we would just put longer hair, but we still draw the same face, maybe put a dress on it or whatever. But we have this sort of like symbol, for a person that's super, super fake. And that's fine. Like that's a really good way to start, drawing. But then when we grow, we want to think, how can we take these sort of like fake looking drawings and make them look more like a real person? That's a big deal. And I did mention that in the slideshow. So if you haven't watched the slideshow, this is a good time to pause, watch the slideshow. And then we come back, what I'm going to do is show you some ways to kind of like break away from your like your old way of drawing and more toward, okay, like how do people really look? That's really what drawing a portrait is about, is thinking, what do real people really look like? So pause if you have to. And let's kind of move on. What I'm going to try to show you is what's the difference between sort of a fake looking picture and a real person. So if you want your portraits to look more like real people, well, number one, don't start with a circle, because human heads are not shaped like circles. They're more oval shaped, more like an egg shape, a little bit more narrow at the bottom, wider at the top. Everyone's a little different, but oval definitely, is better. It's going to work better than a circle. And then we want to start thinking about the features, like what do the features look like? Where should they go? And if you're drawing a specific person, like your mom or yourself or a celebrity or, whoever it is, like you want to think like how can I make that eye look like that exact person's eye? Those are the kinds of things you want to think about with the portrait. So for starters, looking at the eyes, well, we don't have eyes up on our forehead like that. Our eyes are halfway down our head. And we can kind of see that, reminder, like in the slideshow, this little diagram really helps us with that. What you'll see is artists do this kind of thing where they draw a line across. And by the way, when you're drawing, notice like super, super light. I'm drawing actually darker than I feel like I have to because I want you to see it. But, we want to erase these lines. And so just super, super light. The eyes go on that line. And notice the line cuts right through the eyes. So kind of place the eyes on that line. And thinking about ways to kind of like, again, grow from, our cartoony looking drawings to more toward what a real person looks like, just notice, like real people, our eyes are not shaped like circles. Our eyes are not shaped like ovals. Our eyes are more shaped more like a lemon or an almond with points on the ends, not because of any ethnic background or anything like that. It's just because we have eyelids, and where our top eyelid hits the bottom one, we have a little point. So like thinking about those eyes, you want to draw them that way. It's really tricky to get the eyes in the right place, because we can see when they're wrong, right? Like if this is a head and we have eyes out here, that's obviously wrong. we have eyes in here. That's obviously wrong. So how do we get them? The secret is that in the middle, like that space in between the eyes is exactly enough for one more eye. So if you kind of like picture an eye in the middle and then picture two more, next to it like that's really the way to get that right. And again, I'm drawing super light so that I can erase it. But then when I look at this when I'm done, that space in between, to get that space right, it's the space for one eye. That's super, 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 super important. So you can do that by drawing an eye in the middle, drawing two next to it, that helps you to get it. And then notice too, when you look at the shapes of the eyes, when you can look at your own eyes in the mirror, if you're trying to draw a specific person, that's a really good idea, is to actually look at a picture of the person. These points are kind of funny, like they're not usually horizontal. Usually they tip up or they tip down. And so noticing where those points are is kind of important. So if you're trying to draw a face that looks like a real human face, I think that's a really good place to start. Another mistake kind of cartoony thing I see people do is they draw like a circle in the middle of the eye to be the iris, the colored part. That's not really what your iris looks like unless you're looking at a goat, like your Scooby-Doo or something, like looking at a ghost, like you have this like zoinks, but in a real eye, that iris is going to be covered, it is a circle, but it's covered by your eyelid. So you're going to see more like that, or possibly like if this is the eye, you might see more parentheses, keeping in mind that the way a person is looking is going to make a difference. So if a person is looking to the side, the iris is going to be shifted, right? So you can create maybe more interest in a portrait that way. But just thinking about how that iris is going to look is kind of important instead of just making a circle that's going to look super, super fake. And the pupil is a darker part. We can talk about that later, but getting that in the middle can help kind of some focus. Eyes are super important. I mentioned that your eyes are halfway down your face, right? So what that means is that, if you draw a line across the face, the part above it, the part below it is the same. That half, that's the key fraction. And when you look at a diagram like this one, it kind of reminds us how the rest of that works. It's not exactly perfect, but for students like us trying to learn to kind of break away from cartoony faces more toward realistic faces, remembering that half is important. So for example, if these are my eyes and here's my chin, the nose is halfway between those two. And be honest about half. That doesn't mean like two pieces. It means the piece above is the same as the piece below. Like they're equal. That's half. That's kind of important. That's where the tip of the nose is going to go. And we could spend hours and hours and hours drawing noses. We probably still wouldn't be happy with it. They're super, super difficult to draw. But one way to do it is to just think about a couple steps. So again, what I'm trying to do is break away from this, right? Like this is my cartoony nose, super fake. To make a realistic looking nose, you start at first with that part, like that tip, that little rounded tip of your nose. It looks like that. It's like a U shape kind of, or maybe a V shape. It just sort of depends how pointy your nose is. And then the second thing to do is just sort of like extend it out like that, right? So just kind of like extend the edges out. That's the tip of your nose. And then the third part is to draw the like these hoods that go kind of around your nostrils, and then we can sort of see like, hey, there's your nose. A mistake I think a lot of kids make is they draw something like, they make these like nostrils, and it looks like you're looking up somebody's nose, and it's super, super creepy. So you don't want to draw in like super dark nostrils like that or anything. What you want to do is just go, okay, there's the tip of the nose. And remember, it's halfway between your eyes and your chin, right? Kind of extend it out. And also thinking about, how wide is your nose? It doesn't fit right in here. It's not way out here. It's kind of in this range. If you're drawing a specific person, you'd want to look at a picture of that person to see like how, because everybody's nose is different, right? Like some people's are wider, other people's are more narrow, more V-shaped or whatever. We do, kind of see sometimes like students will draw like this kind of thing. What I would really not recommend is drawing a big triangle like that. Like that's really fake looking. So I would avoid that. But it does make sense that, here's your nose, right? And then your nose kind of becomes your eye, excuse me, your eyebrow and stuff. So you could think about that, but just that key is don't go crazy with a cartoony nose, and that's my suggestion there. With your mouth, it's the same thing. You know, you want to kind of think about those same ideas, like where is it supposed to go? How big is it? How can I make it look like a real mouth? We don't want a big, like, you know, slice of watermelon or something like that. You want to think, you know, what does a real mouth look like and where does it go? That half fraction, again, is important. So if this is the chin, here's the nose, halfway between the chin and the nose. That's where the middle of the mouth is going to go. And if you look like that, like right about, if you could just imagine it kind of like a teardrop falling out of each eye, that's going to give you a good idea of where the ends of the mouth, the edges of the mouth should be. When you draw it, again, if you just want it to look like a human mouth, that's one thing. If you want it to look like a specific person, look at the person, you know, really look at their mouth, exactly. But in general, you know, a human mouth, like we have a sort of a dip there. Don't go crazy with that, because, you know, I see students do this, right? They make like a super exaggerated mouth. It looks like those plastic lips that you wear on Halloween or whatever. But a little dip is good. And then, you know, we have one side and the other side, you know, keeping in mind that it's going to come down to about, like I say, like where an eye, you know, tear falls out of your eye. Our bottom lip tends to be a little puffier. You know, it's a little, you can look in the mirror and see for yourself. Your bottom lip has more puffiness to it than your top lip. The middle line, well, that's the one that gives both of your lips their shape. So it's actually super important. Like, you want to look at that and see, like, how is that specific person's lip, you know, shaped? Like, that's really how you want to do that. That's the way you want to draw that mouth. So we have those like the basic shapes. Ears, same thing. I keep repeating the same thing. Like, where does it go? How big should it be? How can you make it look like a real person? Like, those kind of things matter a lot. With ears, the mistake students make is they put the ears, you know, they make like a half a circle or half a heart, which looks super fake. Really, you know, a person's ear doesn't stick out that far. You know, it's gonna be more like that, where it stays a little closer, you know, to the side of a person's head. It's not like a big half a heart like that makes it look like a mythical creature, you know, really, if you do that, or like a monkey or something. Another thing students do is they put the ears way up there, which is sort of a mistake. Your ears they're not going to go much higher than your eye, and they're not going to go much lower than your nose. So that's sort of where the zone is, where the ears should go. And then you could, you know, again, if you want to look at a specific person, look at their ear. Like, some people have earlobes that drop down. You know, some people it's more like connected, but like those are just specific differences. But at least getting it in the right place is kind of important. Hair is important. And what I see students do is they'll go like this. They'll go like that, right? And make it like this is the hair. That's really unusual. You know, it doesn't really, our hair doesn't really look like that. What you want to do is you want to look at the line between where's your hair and where's your forehead. Like, where's your face and where's your hair. Kind of like there. Like, you see, you know, there's that line. And that's where you want to start. So like for here, right? If you know, maybe the person's hair comes across like this. Like, what I say in class is I tell students, you know, don't try to draw every hair. Pretend that you're playing with Lego minifigures or something, you know, and that the hair is sort of like a shape, right? Like this big plastic thing that sits on the face. So I don't have to draw all the million hairs, or however many 100,000 hairs we have. I don't really know, but instead we want to think of it like just like a shape, and maybe it's a couple shapes. Like, here's this person's hair coming down one side, and then they maybe have a part in their hair. The other side, you know, might come down in a different way, like this, and there's the part. What you'll notice is if you get rid of the like the eggy shaped oval that we started with, that really helps a lot, because we really don't have that egg shaped top of our head, but we have that hair. And I can see how maybe if this is, you know, coming down over your shoulder or whatever, I may see some strands, but what I don't want to do is I don't want to go like this and draw every single hair. That's really not the way to go. Just think of it like it's a shape. That's kind of a big thing. A couple things that I would recommend that you do if you want a realistic looking portrait is to pay attention to the neck and the shoulders. I see students, you know, will spend all this time drawing a super realistic portrait, and then they'll make a neck that looks like this, you know. where they just draw, and it looks like a bobblehead, right? Or an alien or something like that. Your neck is almost as wide as your face. So in this portrait that I'm drawing right now, the neck should be like out here. You know, it's pretty wide, right? It's almost as wide as your face. And then pretty soon it's not your neck anymore. It just kind of like turns into your shoulders. Notice we don't have shoulders like this. We're not robots with right angles. We don't have shoulders like this, like a lot of kids draw, and they try to like squeeze their shoulders under their head. Your shoulders kind of go out, and you know, they're wider than your face. Even the slimmest person you meet, your shoulders are going to be out here. So I wouldn't like crunch the body under there. It's going to make it like super cartoony. We see that a lot, like where kids go like this. You know, there's the head, right? And the body like fits under the head. You know, nobody's body fits under their head. Like your body's wider, so stretch it out. Maybe you want to picture like what the person's wearing or something like that. But that can definitely, you know, make it look a little bit more realistic. Also, what you'll notice is if you start by drawing an oval, nobody's face is really shaped like an oval. We have bones, and so where we have bones, you know, you're going to see the face is going to have more sharpness and definition to it, like in your chin and your cheekbones, you know, like that, right? And we have also some hollow places. So trying to almost imagine yourself like a sculptor, like Michelangelo, with like hammering with a chisel, like you're chiseling out. Okay, that's where the chin is really going to be. That's where the cheek is going to be. Like that can help you to make it look more human and not so much alien, which I think is what we find sometimes. And those are some basic things. Like we did leave out a lot of stuff. So like, for example, eyebrows, you know, and any details that make it look more like you, like a little mole or whatever. Like those kinds of things you can pay attention to. But in general, like if you're trying to break away from sort of like the things that you did when you were in first grade and second grade that were sort of cartoony, and you want your pictures to look more like a real person, like these are the ideas. Think about where everything goes. That half fraction is kind of a key. Start with an oval and think half, and then half, and then half, right? And then look at what real facial features are shaped like. You know, we don't have circle or oval shaped eyes. They're more pointy on the ends. Our nose doesn't look like a triangle. You know, it has features like that little tip and the nostrils and stuff. Our mouth is not shaped like a piece of watermelon or a banana. We have lips. And so if you pay attention to those things, that's the way to grow from that, you know, more toward this. I have to say too, you know, honestly, realism is one thing. And I mentioned this in the slideshow, like we respect it, you know, when someone shows us a picture and they say, hey, is this any good? Like they show us a picture of, say, like a horse, and they say, is this good? And we go, yeah, that's really good. Usually what we're saying is, yeah, that does look like a horse, you know, like that we really do value realism. But with a portrait, I mean, realism is one thing, and then maybe being abstract is more interesting because we have cameras, after all, to capture, you know, realistic pictures of people. So if we're trying to show someone's personality and that kind of thing, maybe some more abstract pieces make more sense. I did mention this in the video, but for example, like something that's become really popular is, you know, because of Picasso really and Henri Matisse, is, you know, having some sort of a portrait that is divided in half. Like for example, if, you know, here are my eyes and I have a nose or whatever, like thinking about some way of sort of breaking the picture into two halves becomes kind of interesting because you can show like two different halves of a person's personality. That can be interesting. And you'll notice that when artists focus on abstract pieces, they're not so focused on reality. What they're doing is they're thinking, okay, about a shape, right? And even if my hair doesn't really look like this, and even if my neck, you know, doesn't really look like this, somehow the combination of shapes and lines becomes really interesting, you know, in its own self. And so when you go to draw, I want you to think about those two things. Like reality, you know, can be really interesting, especially if we're trying to grow past more immature ways of drawing that we have learned in first grade, right? And yet also, being a little bit more, abstract, where it doesn't actually look like a person, but instead the shapes and the colors and stuff kind of take over. That also can be interesting. I just want for that to be like an artistic choice. It's like you're doing it on purpose, not just you don't really know how to draw a person, or you're still drawing the same person you learned to draw in kindergarten or whatever. Like I want that to all be artistic choices for you. So learning like where everything is, like I would say, supposed to go, that's kind of an important step for, say, third graders, fourth graders, fifth graders. When once you've kind of like figured that out, like learning some ways to like change it, for artistic reasons is also, pretty important. I want to say, just as a little note, cartooning's great, and it's fun. It's really relaxing and sometimes really satisfying to see that a way that you learn to draw something comes out the same way again and again and again and again, like 100 times. Like to do the same exact face 100 times can be really fun. And you might all the manga drawings and stuff where kids have a certain way of drawing a mouth that's not really realistic, or a nose that's not realistic. Like those are really great, but that's totally different than drawing a realistic portrait. They're just two completely different things. So if you like drawing cartoons, you like manga, you like all that stuff, like don't stop doing that. That's really, really good. Drawing a realistic person is a different thing, and it's, they're just like two different things to learn. And then drawing, kind of like an abstract portrait would be something to do beyond that. Those are, all different things I show in the slideshow, and that I want to encourage you to do. If you've drawn a portrait, like I don't want you to be one of those kids who's like, oh, I've already drawn a portrait. I'm going to say, great. Like an artist doesn't draw one portrait and then stop, like what you'd want to do is draw one, draw a bunch, draw your mom, draw yourself, draw your favorite singer, your favorite athlete, your teacher who you miss, like draw a bunch of different portraits to see like how you can use the skills, to get people to look the way you want, or how you feel about them. That's kind of the fun of it. Show me your artwork, please. When you finish your project and you say turned in, please send me a picture so I can kind of see what you're learning, and have some fun with it. I hope you have a great week, and we'll see you soon.